And we are back with Green Mountain Mornings on WKVT 100.3 FM, AM 1490, Brattleboro's news talk station. 14 degrees out there and 8:39 on your Friday, January 5th. I'm your host, Olga Peters, and I'd like to welcome back to the show Randy Holhut from the Commons. Welcome, Randy.
Hello again.
Hello, hello. So along with the Central Fire Station's January 19th open house, when Chief Bukasi took me through the old station to show me some of the things that needed repair and had kind of gone beyond the point of repair, I just walked around with my eyes as big as saucers because I think just that morning they had a part of a wall give way because of leaks in the roof.
Leaks in the roof, plaster, getting loosened up from vibration and whatnot, mold on the walls, things just really being outmoded for a building that was built in 1947, if memory serves, and it was not designed for modern fire apparatus or modern fire equipment. They didn't have Scott packs back in the 40s, or they didn't have rescue trucks or dive teams or anything like that. You grabbed your helmet and your boots and your raincoat and ran to the truck.
Right. Well, and what always surprised me about the old fire station that I guess I had taken for granted as someone who doesn't fully understand what it takes to be a firefighter, but we expect our emergency responders to run towards danger. And they do. And firefighters, of course, run into burning buildings. And we expect there to be dangers there. And with modern building materials, there are a number of toxins that firefighters are now exposed to when they are at fires. But what I couldn't get over with this old building was how many toxins they were still being exposed to between the exhaust and the asbestos and just all these things that for people who were spending an overnight 24 hours in this building, it just felt really unfair to me.
Yeah, and these guys aren't exactly drawing exorbitant checks either. Mm-hmm. It was the same situation over at the police station at the municipal center, the conditions they had to work under. And now, there's the new firehouse in Westby that everyone wants to be assigned to because it's so nice.
Right.
and now there'll be a lot less fighting once this fully is operational. But as it looks like now, that pretty much everything is done.
Okay.
And the front bays where the trucks used to be are going to be where the smaller equipment, like the alarm truck or the dive team wagon or some of the other cars will be used, and the back will be where the fire trucks will be. Mm-hmm. The offices for the chiefs and the receptionists, they're all new, and they're in the front of the building.
Okay.
So they're down on the ground floor now.
Just for listeners understanding, the chief and the receptionist, kind of the administrative staff, used to be on the second floor, kind of overlooking the Sam Elliott apartments.
Yes, and you had to go through the meeting hall and the kitchen to get to their offices.
Yeah. Well, and moving the offices downstairs, if I remember correctly, was a part of the fire department's desire to be better and more accessible for the public.
Yeah, and because before, there's no elevator in the firehouse, so there was no way that someone who might have a mobility issue could get upstairs to bring their concerns to the chief. They pretty much had to go into the foyer that used to exist next to the bay and kind of call up their complaint.
Right.
And
right.
You can't do that in this day and age.
No. Just before we go to the bottom of the hour news, Randy, I wanted to check in. As someone who's recently toured the new fire station, what is your favorite part, or what amazed you the most?
I think that the new engine bay,
Okay.
that the high ceilings, the nice clean walls, the exhaust ports for the trucks, the roominess, the equipment that's not cheek by jowl, next to the trucks anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That it just looked like a clean, efficient, modern fire department. The captain's office right off of the bay, so the whoever the duty officer is for a given shift, he's right there by next to the equipment stuffed upstairs, a good distance away from it. It looks like a well thought out and efficient fire department. A fire department building, the one thing that the department's been wanting for years, and now finally has. And I think it's going to make a huge difference with the department. It's going to be able to continue its record of being one of the best in the state.
Thank you, Randy. There are a couple other events that you think listeners want to know about, and the first is a Stone Soup Social.
Yes, the American Legion is doing that again this year. Getting together all the nonprofits of the Brattleboro area to have some hot soup and get together on a cold night and enjoy each other's company and learn about each other's nonprofits. It's going to be next Saturday, the 13th, from 4:30 to 6:30 at the Legion home on Linden Street, and it's going to be a good time.
And will the
I was
Commons
there
be
for the
there?
first one last year, and I was really surprised at how many people showed up, and how interesting it was to see everyone getting together and learning about each other.
And will the Commons be there again this year?
Well, the Commons wasn't there last year. I made it a point that we should be there as part of this, and definitely did that.
Okay. Well, good luck on the 13th at the Legion.
No, I take that back. It's from 5 to 6:30.
Oh, 5 to 6:30.
5 to 6:30, so there'll be time enough for you to get home to watch Tom Brady at 8:15.
But there'll also be soup if you want to stay for soup.
Yes, there will be soup. But it's, as John Hagan, the post commander, calls it, a social, recreational, and service fair open to the public with a special invitation to all veterans. Come in and enjoy some hot, delicious soup and visit with more than 30 groups participating. And you can give John a call at 251-0777. That's 251-0777.
Thank you, Randy.
That's the Post 5 number.
And tell us, too, there is another film coming up as part of the Commons and Brooks Memorial Library and Latches journalism film series.
Yes, broadcast news on Sunday, the 7th at 4 p.m. at the Latches. This will be a fun one.
Okay.
It's hard to believe it's been 30 years since that came out.
Oh, wow.
Because I remember seeing it in the theater when it did come out, and it was right at that moment where the news business was starting to change. I was still young and starting out in it at the time, and television kind of changing from kind of sober to less so.
Okay, interesting.
and just the interaction of people who love their job more than they love each other, and love journalism more than they love each other. And what happens when people are under fire and on the job?
Mm-hmm. And what do you think is relevant about this film for today's journalism world?
Well, it shows you, besides giving a walk down memory lane in that age before, when CNN was still a joke and the internet didn't exist.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good point.
And people still watch the evening news at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, depending on what time your station carried it.
Mm-hmm.
Just seeing what it was like, what the first inklings of putting profits ahead of the newscast and kind of getting wiggly about ethics.
Ah, okay. Well, thank you, Randy. And that's happening when? Remind me of the date.
That's happening on Sunday, the 7th, at 4 o'clock at the Latches, and a really good cast. Holly Hunter, Albert Brooks, William Hurt, really good writer James Brooks, the one who gave you Taxi, and Mary Tyler Moore,
Mm-hmm.
who did the movie, and it holds up really well, really exceptionally well, and it's just a fun movie.
Thank you. Well, let's move on from movies to marijuana. The legislature passed it last night.
Yes, it is, but unfortunately, everyone's favorite racist little leprechaun, Jeff Sessions, is going to harsh everyone's mellow.
Of course. Don't want people having too much fun after all.
So, California just legalized recreational marijuana use, and they are right there with Alaska, Colorado, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington in terms of doing that. California, they're expecting a $7 billion market by the end of this decade.
Wow. That's nothing to blow your nose at right there.
And they were the first to legalize medical marijuana. So there's a lot of stuff happening, and other states are getting ready to, like Maine is going to vote on it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are going to start making it legal to sell. Massachusetts also. Vermont's still debating it, and I guess they're getting closer over the governor's objections.
Well, last night the House passed its sort of stripped down legalization that will allow people over 21 to have up to an ounce of pot or 2 mature plants. So that's on its way to the Senate right now.
Yeah. And then there's the little racist leprechaun that Sessions, who equates it with marijuana with heroin.
I was really annoyed by his kind of moral stance that he was taking on marijuana, but especially medical marijuana.
Yeah, but there's no accepted use for that. It's dangerous, bad.
Yeah, it felt very narrow-minded to me.
Well, it's also hypocritical in the extreme because, conservatives love to talk about states' rights and allowing the states to set policy and not Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, that's been a lie for years because it means policies we like, we want the states to set. Policies we don't like, no way. We don't want you to set your own minimum wage that's higher than what we like, or we don't want you to have sick time leave that give sick time to workers because that's costs money and things like that. And marijuana, no, we don't like that, so you can't do that.
Do you think? I mean, this has been a discussion for a long time with states' rights and federal rights, and of course, it came to the fore in Vermont with when Entergy sued the state of Vermont over the requirements that Vermont had for it to renew its license for Vermont Yankee.
Yeah.
Do you think that states' rights is even being chipped away more under this new administration? Or is this just an ongoing theme?
Well, it's an ongoing thing because a big part of what's going on with the conservative movement right now is trying to undermine the power of local and state governments to set policy. Because they've been acting as the resistance to the Trump administration and to Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell in terms of, declaring themselves sanctuary cities and or declaring higher minimum wages than the federal standard,
right? Or
or paid sick leave or other anti-discrimination laws.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the areas where they just don't the policy of federalism of letting the states decide their policy, what's best for them, kind of doesn't apply anymore. Mm-hmm. But it does apply for what they things like making it legal to carry a concealed weapon in all 50 states.
Right. Right.
If you happen to come from a place that lets you do it, like Vermont.
Well, speaking about the state of Vermont, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the State of the State address that Governor Scott gave yesterday afternoon. Did you have a chance to tune in or read it?
And yes, I did have a chance to read it, and it looks like somebody dug into the file cabinet and pulled out a Jim Douglas speech.
Oh, now there's some interesting context I didn't have because I was not a reporter during Douglas's administration. Tell me more.
Well, it's just the same old things. Affordability. Young people fleeing Vermont. We have too many old people. The business climate's too difficult. Blah blah blah.
What would you have liked to have seen in his State of the State address?
I would like to see him, say that, yeah, it is difficult to live in Vermont because of affordability being the issue, but that holding the line on spending means that there's going to be less money for education. Mm-hmm. There's going to be less money for social services, less for economic development and improving infrastructure, less for public safety and law enforcement. It means all the things that people come to Vermont for, because we still have a state that works, mm-hmm. a government that works. It's not ruled by crazy people.
Right. Okay.
You take that away and we're Mississippi. We're Alabama.
Good point. Good point.
About the only good thing I heard out of I saw from Scott's speech was his proposal to give free in-state tuition for Vermont colleges to members of the Vermont National Guard. I mean, it took 30 years for him to come up to adopt the idea, because Massachusetts has been doing it since the early 80s. That's who paid for my tuition to UMass.
Okay.
What was serving in the Army National Guard in Massachusetts back in the 80s.
Well, I agree. That was one proposal in his speech that both excited me but felt the most fleshed out as well.
Yeah, and also another element that's been pushed for some time was exempting veterans from property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Considering how much trouble that veterans are having, particularly older ones, in paying their taxes, it's a nice gesture,
right,
toward people who've sacrificed more than most in upholding the nation's values.
I spoke with Tristan Tolino in the 7 o'clock hour about the State of the State address, and we spent a fair amount of time talking about affordability, and he brought up something really important, I think, that while the governor kind of bangs this drum about affordability, his definition is actually probably different than what most working Vermonters would say is affordability. Namely workers' rights, namely better wages, better benefits, things that make living and working and paying your bills a little bit easier. What are your thoughts, Randy? How do you see Scott's view of affordability?
Yeah, this would be that it would be based on the needs of business, mm-hmm. and not the needs of workers. And granted, Vermont right now is one of the highest minimum wages in the country.
Mm-hmm. But it's still lower than what the Joint Fiscal Office says is a working wage.
Well, it's not at least $15, which could go a long way to solving a lot of the problems with poverty here. Mm-hmm. That there's that why are 1 in 8 Vermonters on getting food stamps?
Right.
Why are 1 in 6 children in Vermont living in poverty?
Mm-hmm. Well, and the disturbing trend, as pointed out by the Public Assets Institute, is that trend line for poverty in Vermont is going up.
Yeah, and Vermont is a wonderful place if you happen to have you're lucky enough to bring in your own money, so you can buy a house for comparatively next to nothing, when you compare it to the overheated real estate market, say in Boston or New York or in California or some of the other hot spots in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can live really comfortably in Vermont, but what about everybody else?
Right.
The property taxes keep going up. The cost of education keeps going up. It's cost money to build bridges and maintain roads and pay for adequate police and fire protection and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a case of that the people who can afford to pay are still not paying their fair share.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly that's been a case for the last 40 years from since the Reagan administration of government is the problem and not the solution to, and this whole idea that government bad, evil,
right,
no good, can't do anything right. That's even poisoned down to this level, the poison to dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remember, it's not government, it's not a them, it's an us. We're government, especially here in Vermont, because we still have self-government in Vermont.
Good point. Good point compared to other places.
So, if priorities, yeah, they should be. I think giving away money to corporations to come to Vermont, it's a non-starter. People have said that we can't give money. We can't throw the kind of money like, say, Wisconsin threw a couple $100 million at Foxconn, the company that puts together your iPad and iPhone,
right,
to come to Wisconsin, and in exchange for that plus huge tax breaks. We can't do that. That would bankrupt Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
We're selling something else, and that's why small entrepreneurs are coming to Vermont, and that's a really good quality of life. You look at every metric that matters, not the BS stats that you hear Grover Norquist's group use, but in every issue that matters, on education, on public safety, on quality of life, on health, Vermont is usually in the top 5, if not number 1, in every one of those categories.
Right. Yes.
That's how you get people to come to your state and work and live and contribute to the economy.
Mm-hmm.
And that costs money. You got to be prepared to pay for it if you want to have a good quality of life, or else you're Mississippi or Alabama.
Right, because if that's the thing, while we have a great quality of life in so many ways in Vermont, if we don't have sustainable wages and places where workers want to stay,
yep,
then over time that quality of life will be diminished because people will just be in survival mode.
Yeah, and that's the Moonlight in Vermont or Starve bumper sticker you see around.
Yep.
And that's untenable too. Right.
Or the other bumper sticker, what do you call a Vermonter who has only 3 jobs?
Lazy.
Mm-hmm. So looking ahead to 2018, Randy, what are the issues that you'll be following?
Hard to say because it's 2018 just started, and we got a lot to on our plate with a lot of what happens here is going to be determined by what happens in Washington with Congress and the Trump administration and all the chaos that we're seeing there. Mm-hmm. The tax law, we're still going to be having to sort out that for how much impact it has on Vermont, and a state that has high property taxes and high state taxes that won't be deductible anymore,
right,
to the extent that they were.
Good point.
We have it's going to be a work in progress. I can only say that, and figuring out what we're going to do with the rest of the year.
Well, thank you so much, Randy. We have to end it there, but I look forward to talking to you in 2 weeks.
Okay, and meanwhile, Miss Wendy will pick up the slack.
She will be here. Looking forward to it.
Okay.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.